A cowardly, politically motivated murder. A man goes on trial for killing MP Joe Cox. It's alleged Thomas Mair shouted "Britain first" before shooting and stabbing the politician. And prosecutors say days before the attack, he searched online for Nazi material.
Also tonight, the government says Nigel Farage won't be a third party in their relationship with Donald Trump.
Dementia, not heart disease, is now the leading killer in England and Wales.
Close encounters of the lunar kind, the supermoon lighting up the skies around the world.
This is the ITV Evening News with Mark Austin and Mary Nightingale.
Good evening. The MP Joe Cox was murdered by a far-right extremist who screamed "Britain first" before he shot and stabbed her, a court heard today. 53-year-old Thomas Mair is accused of carrying out the politically motivated attack just days before the EU referendum last June.
A jury heard that before the murder, Mair had been looking at white extremist websites and was armed with a large pistol and knife. Witnesses described how he attacked the MP from behind, minutes after she arrived at constituency surgery in Peston, West Yorkshire. Paul Davis was in court.
Joe Cox's parents and her sister Kim came to the Central Criminal Court to hear a graphic account of the MP's murder and to see the man accused of carrying it out. They and the newly sworn-in jury were told the 41-year-old MP, wife and mother was shot and stabbed to death in a politically motivated attack. Thomas Mair, one of Joe Cox's constituents, faces a charge of murder. This photograph was taken shortly after his arrest. The prosecution say he adapted this .22 pistol and shot the MP 3 times from close range. It's claimed he also repeatedly stabbed Joe Cox with this dagger. The prosecutors said it was a cowardly attack by a man armed with a firearm and a knife. Thomas Mair's intention was to kill her in what was a planned and premeditated murder for a political and/or ideological cause. The popular politician was killed as she arrived at a constituency surgery in Peston on June the 16th this year. But the prosecution say Mair had been planning the attack for weeks. He'd been a regular visitor to his local library. Computer records there show a disturbing line of research. The month before Joe Cox's murder, Mair had studied far-right publications described as white nationalist and anti-Semitic. He viewed Joe Cox's Twitter profile and Wikipedia page 3 days before her killing. He read about MP Ian Gow, then the last MP to be murdered. The 53-year-old also researched gun ammunition and whether one shot to the head could be deadly. The next day, he searched for Nazi material and serial killers. 24 hours before Joe Cox's killing, Mair used a public computer to research the Ku Klux Klan and bullets for a gun. The court has heard a series of distressing eyewitness accounts from people who saw the gun and knife attack. After it was over, they all said, as Joe Cox lay dying, they heard the man who carried it out shout a number of similar phrases. One heard the words, "Britain first. This is for Britain. Britain will always come first." The prosecution say Joe Cox was killed because she was an MP and her views differed from those of her attacker. It's claimed that attacker is the man being driven back to prison tonight, who's said to have described himself as a political activist when he was arrested.
So, Paul, you were in court. Clearly a desperately difficult day, this, for her family.
Well, I thought Joe Cox's family were extremely dignified today in such dreadfully, dreadfully difficult circumstances. But the one man who showed no emotion today was Thomas Mair, the accused. He sat there, he was wearing a dark suit and a black tie, but he just sat and looked out over the court for 2 hours. I caught him shake his head briefly once and make a few notes. That's all. He's had a not guilty plea entered for him because he won't enter a plea of his own. He will, of course, be back in that court tomorrow as the prosecution continues.
All right, Paul, thank you very much indeed.
Downing Street insisted today that the government does not need the help of Nigel Farage in its dealings with President-elect Donald Trump. It said there was no need for a third person in the relationship.
It follows the UKIP leader's coup in becoming the first foreign politician to meet Mr Trump following his victory. Our political correspondent Libby Vina has more.
It may have been Brexit that propelled Theresa May into number 10. But the Prime Minister, on a visit to a diabetes charity today, faces a new set of foreign policy challenges thanks to the election of this man, Donald Trump. A protectionist who thinks NATO is obsolete, you might think could present some problems. The Foreign Secretary said Mrs May was optimistic.
Donald Trump, as I've said before, is a deal maker. And I think that can be a good thing for Britain, but it can also be a good thing for Europe. And that's, I think, what we need to focus on today.
But what about Nigel Farage's attempt to steal the limelight with this photo call? Number 10 today pointed to Mr Trump's talk of a new relationship, similar to that enjoyed by a former president and prime minister in the 1980s. The president-elect talked about enjoying the same relationship Reagan and Thatcher did, her spokeswoman said. I don't remember there being any third person in that relationship. Having got his photo call with the president-elect, Mr Farage didn't take too kindly to that, dismissing Downing Street officials as ghastly little apparatchiks, trying to keep him out of everything. One former minister said there was no reason for him to get involved at all.
Having a third person who is not a party leader, who hasn't been elected to the British Parliament, who's not a peer or has any official position at all, strikes me as exceptionally unhelpful. You know, this is a time for the UK government to use its diplomatic network, its embassies, its relationships in the US to build that new relationship with the new US administration.
In her speech at Guildhall tonight, the Prime Minister is expected to speak of how the world has changed with Mr Trump's election and that politicians must respond to the new mood. Libby Vina, ITV News, Westminster.
Well, our political editor Robert Peston is at the Guildhall in the City of London, where the Prime Minister will be speaking shortly. Now, Robert, 5 days on, is it any clearer what the impact will be of Mr Trump's election?
Short answer is no, and there have been some very confusing signals. He's appointed one small C Conservative Washington insider as his chief of staff and somebody seen as an extreme right winger to the position of director of strategy. Now, here in the elegant surroundings of the Guildhall, what city folk in all their finery are desperate to hear is how she will respond to the election of Donald Trump. Will she simply roll over and accept everything that he wants, or will she try and influence him? And I think that what we'll hear from her in her important speech in a couple of hours' time is that she will try and sell to him the importance of promoting free trade. Now, during his campaign, he came across as a protectionist, somebody who wanted to dismantle North America's free trade arrangements and impose tariffs on China. That would be disastrous for us because as we come out of the European single market, we need to tap other markets. We need tariffs to be as low as possible. And she will wave the flag for free trade, though she'll also say that free trade has damaged lots of people on lower incomes, and she will say that we've got to find a way to lift those people up.
Robert Peston in the City of London, thank you.
Well, in the States, Donald Trump has called on people who have carried out hate crimes and racist attacks following his election to stop. In his first television interview since his victory, he also urged Americans not to be afraid of his presidency, but his decision to appoint a man critics describe as a right-wing racist as his chief strategist has done little to calm fears, as our Washington correspondent Robert Moore reports.
In a fresh twist on the national protests, high school students in the suburbs of Washington took to the streets today. They are demonstrating against a Trump presidency, 67 days before he even takes office. But these spontaneous rallies are still small scale, and a national mobilization of opposition is only being discussed. But what is being noted is a rise in hate crimes and extreme right-wing graffiti. This sign was placed outside a Hispanic church in Maryland. This intolerance and xenophobia was directly addressed by the president-elect in his first TV interview since his victory.
I am so saddened to hear that, and I say stop it if it helps. I will say this, and I'll say it right to the camera, stop it.
But at the same time, he also confirmed he would implement a campaign promise of deporting millions of undocumented workers.
People that are criminal and have criminal records, gang members, drug dealers, we have a lot of these people, probably 2 million, it could even be 3 million. We're getting them out of our country or we're going to incarcerate.
One of Trump's first appointments is to make Stephen Bannon, who runs a racially inflammatory news website, his chief strategist. One man who knows Bannon well warns the British government to be very careful in racing to embrace a Trump White House.
Well, I think it could be incredibly damaging for whether it's a prime minister, whether it's the royal family, whether it's an ambassador, to just give your credibility over that easily without knowing what's going to happen. This is uncharted territory. We've never had a president like this ever. And I think that while we've had this incredible special relationship, with London and Great Britain, doing this now and coming here just kind of with your blinders on could ultimately hurt them in the long run.
There is certainly profound unease, even among Republicans, about Bannon being so close to the center of power. The next wave of appointments will now be watched even more closely to see if a Trump administration will truly embrace a harsh, conspiratorial, right-wing and anti-globalist agenda. Robert Moore, ITV News, Washington.
The UN says 2016 is set to be the hottest year ever recorded. Figures from the World Meteorological Organization show temperatures this year are 1.2 degrees above pre-industrial levels. Scientists say the impact of climate change on people is coming quicker and with more ferocity even than expected.
New Zealand has called in military helicopters and a naval ship to help rescue more than 1,000 tourists and residents left stranded by 2 powerful earthquakes.
The quakes hit just after midnight local time, leaving 2 people dead and causing major damage to buildings and roads on the South Island. There have also been dozens of smaller aftershocks. From New Zealand, Sally Lockwood has the latest.
Flattened homes and buried roads now being hit by hundreds of aftershocks, while landslides on this coastal road near Kaikoura show the sheer scale of destruction. The tourist hotspot is now completely cut off, homes destroyed, and more than 1,000 people needing airlifted to safety. The Prime Minister described the scene as utter devastation, with bad weather now hampering access.
So some very short-term practical issues that need to be resolved, making sure that we get more water, food and ultimately people in here to support the nearly 600 people that are at the welfare centre.
Farmland has been destroyed too, animals scrambling to safety, only to find themselves stranded. Images from Wellington show the force of the quake as it hit the city. Stock at a golf warehouse falling like dominoes.
The second earthquake struck around lunchtime today. It lasted around 30 seconds. It was another very, very strong shake. People just stopped what they were doing and froze. People are very, very worried here. The memory of Christchurch in 2011 is still very fresh in people's minds, and they think that Wellington will be next.
The clear-up of homes still standing will take weeks. But the main hope for now is the tremors soon stop. Many people too frightened to return home.
It's hard. Sorry. Do you want us to? It's in the Christchurch ones, and that's just put it all back.
Just so devastating and shocking. It knocked me out of bed. Things fell in the room that I was staying in. The hotel that I was staying in is now, condemned. I can't return.
The cost of the damage has been estimated at more than £1 billion. But the severe aftershocks that continue more than 24 hours on have left New Zealanders in fear that worse could still be to come. Sally Lockwood, ITV News, Wellington.
Still to come on the ITV Evening News, caring for people with dementia. As it's revealed, it's now the leading cause of death.
And what Meghan said about Harry just a few months before they became a couple. You can't wait, can you? Find out after the break.
Welcome back. Dementia has become the biggest single killer in England and Wales, overtaking cancers and heart disease for the first time. Official figures show that of the 530,000 deaths last year, more than 61,000 were due to age-related diseases like Alzheimer's.
Yes, it's thought better lifestyles and treatment are behind the shift, but there are also concerns it could have huge implications for social care. Sally Percival, who looks after her mother Audrey, told Damon Green about living with dementia.
Do you want some more hand cream?
Yes, please.
OK.
Audrey's suffered from dementia for 6 years. She's almost deaf now and confined to her bed, and her family knows she hasn't long left. But she's at home at her house in Cumbria, surrounded by the people who love her and still does the things she enjoys the most.
My mum is still very much present. You know, she still beams when you walk in. There are some days when she doesn't recognise me, but she's still happy to see people. And she's always happy to have a glass of champagne.
Audrey's had a long and happy life, a clever and funny and energetic young woman, a head teacher who loved the outdoors, loved her life in the Lake District when she retired. But when she was diagnosed in 2010, she made sure she set out in writing exactly how she wanted to meet her end. The living will she wrote with her daughter's help means the family can be certain what she wants in her last days.
That's been the most important thing, not only for my mum, but for us as a family to know clearly when we're in a bit of an emotional state, because our mum's dying, we're very clear. We can refer to this living will and know that we're doing the right thing by my mother.
If more of us are to die from dementia than from any other cause, all the more reason, say Audrey's family, to enjoy the time we have.
Without doubt. I've really enjoyed this time with my mum.
My kids are lovely.
They are. Yeah. They are lovely. And I sit with her and I talk with her and I make sure that everything's all right in her world.
And when her time comes, as doctors say it could any day, she will have lived every day on her own terms. Damon Green, ITV News in Cumbria.
Alton Towers is cutting up to 70 jobs following last year's Smiler roller coaster crash. The theme park says it's been experiencing low visitor numbers after the accident, which saw 2 teenagers have their legs amputated.
And police have begun a week-long crackdown on motorists using their mobile phones. It follows government plans to double fines and points for offenders. Police say they want to make using a phone behind the wheel as socially unacceptable as drink driving.
Now, if you've been lucky enough to see the full moon tonight, you may have noticed it's a little fuller than normal. That's because it's the closest it's been to the Earth for almost 70 years.
Yes, the phenomenon is known as a supermoon, and we won't see another like it until 2034. Our Scotland correspondent Peter Smith has been gazing at the skies in Aberdeen.
When the moon looks this big, you don't need a telescope to appreciate it. No one has seen a supermoon like this for 68 years.
Today is at its closest point throughout the whole year, and actually at its closest for about 70 years. So that means it's going to be a little bit bigger in the sky, which is perfect for us because we always want to, take a closer look at all the craters and the seas on the moon. So we're very excited about tonight.
This is the closest the moon has been to the Earth since 1948. The moon orbits the Earth every 27 days in an oval shape, so the distance from our planet constantly varies. A moon is considered super when it's full and at its closest point to the Earth. At this time, it will pass within almost 216,000 miles of the Earth's surface. And if skies are clear, the moon will appear up to 14% bigger and 30% brighter than usual. For millennia, the moon has intrigued humans looking up to the night sky. Around the world tonight, people are captivated by images of this lunar phenomenon. Asia got the first glimpse. Now it's over Europe. And when the moon comes this close, its gravitational pull affects the tides, which meant a wet day for people in Venice.
Unfortunately, even this moon isn't quite super enough to defeat the British night sky in November. Much of the country tonight is covered by a thick layer of cloud, and that's frustrating many moon gazers' views of this supermoon.
It's getting bigger!
It's a common problem with astronomy, particularly in Scotland, but yeah, you just sort of keep trying and eventually you get to see all the good things.
Hopefully you'll be here for the next one anyway.
Hopefully, a few years out, but yeah, hopefully the boys will come back and visit us and we'll see it again.
And NASA has assured us If you do miss this one, there will be another supermoon of the same size in the year 2034. Peter Smith, ITV News, Aberdeenshire.
I'm afraid you might miss it, actually. This is the scene tonight in Ross-on-Wye.
dear.
Super-ish, Herefordshire, much like the rest of the UK. The moon is obscured, as you can see, by cloud. Oh, dear. But it's not just the UK, of course. This is the view right now. It's more like it. Cape Town in South Africa. Proper supermoon there.
So if you can't see it where you are, then fly to Cape Town or go to our website, itv.com/news. And don't worry, if you miss it tonight, it will be almost as big tomorrow.
And clear, we hope.
And clear, we hope.
Right.
Yeah.
Finally tonight. A little over a year ago, the actress Meghan Markle was taking part in a light-hearted interview with a celebrity magazine. For a bit of fun, they asked her to choose between Prince William and Prince Harry.
Her answer then wasn't a big deal, but now as Harry's official girlfriend, it's taken on a whole new significance. So who did she choose? Richard Pallow reveals all.
She's only been dating him for a few months, yet it appears Meghan Markle might just have had designs on Prince Harry before the pair had even met. They've still never been seen together in public. A potential debut at Saturday's England Rugby International didn't happen, with the Prince there on his own. But long before the royal romance began, in an interview from October last year, the American actress was asked what now seems a rather pertinent question.
Prince William or Prince Harry? Harry. Harry? Sure.
Perhaps she was playing it cool, or perhaps it was just because the other option was married. Either way, she is now back in her home city of Toronto, Canada, there to film a new series of the American drama Suits.
I was hitting on you.
You were? The only appearance on camera we're likely to get for the moment. Richard Pallow, ITV News.
OK, that's about it. Go check out the moon. The clouds may have parted. That's it from us. Raggy Omar will be here with the news at 10.
From all the evening news team, have a great time. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.